Okay, so so this should be, you should see this on your assignment list now. If you don't, let me know, but I think it says publish, so you should be able to see it. Pretty basic instructions. I'll go through a demo today with this, but we're gonna be doing a travel poster. Pick a location or someplace you'd like to go to, or place you've been, kind of as your inspiration. You should be going through kind of how to, look at design styles. We talked about that on Thursday last week. So look at that as to ways of designing, as to style, inspiration, those kind of things. I'm going to send myself try to airdrop something when I go through. We'll see if it comes through on the computer. Okay. So the poster is a travel poster. And again, we'll go through some more inspiration today. 11 by 17 will be the size. And we're going to save it as a PDF. And you'll email it to me. The deadline will be Tuesday, April 13th. So that's a week after we come back. So if I look at our calendar, next week is spring break. And then we have a week of class, and then it'll be due the following Tuesday the 13th. Okay, so we've got basically basically almost do a month, 3 weeks from today. So plenty of time to work on this and make this look nice without having to feel like you're rushing. Okay. Okay, and it can be for any location that you want. We'll pick a location today and kind of go through and do a quick poster in Illustrator just as a demo. We will be getting into InDesign a little bit shortly. We've got a little bit more to do in Illustrator, but we'll go into InDesign probably after spring break, and I will finish us up with the semester. So we had Photoshop, had Illustrator, and then we're going to have InDesign. So we'll go through some of the things you can do in InDesign and work up a project or two with that, just to give you a basis of how that program works. Okay, so that will be coming up. So if you haven't downloaded InDesign yet to your computer, do that over the next week or so. No rush, but feel free to download it and start to look at it. And again, we'll start to go through that program shortly on that. All right. Other questions you guys have? Questions? Not at all. All right. All right, so let's go through some Illustrator stuff. And I'm going to keep this. We'll use this as our logo for our poster. Okay. All right. So let's start as if we were doing this from scratch, brand new. We said we're going to be a file. It's going to be 11 by 17. So I'm just going to go new, file new. And we're going to change this over to points, from points to pixels, inches rather. And we're going to do width of 11, height of 17. You can leave the bleeds. That's just kind of the area at the end. If we were doing a full bleed, basically a bleed is when we add extra to the page. So when it prints and cuts, we don't potentially get a white line. I'll show you that in a second here. Rasterize 300, CMYK, and we'll create. So we're gonna, so this is our tablet, our area to work with. So when I talked about a bleed, and you will hear this come up a lot, if I make a image, picture, whatever happens to be, and I'm right to the edge of the box, and I'm going to give it a fill color so you can see it. When we print this, that looks fine. But the problem is when they go to cut this, they use these big machines, these big like kind of guillotine machines to print. And if they potentially are off by even just kind of a fraction, it might leave a white mark there. So where we see this kind of little black line, it might be a white line. So I'm going to switch this like to 0, and we'll see if it makes a difference. So what we do is what we call a bleed is when we take our objects and make them larger than the paper or the palette type of thing, the artboard. So basically what we're doing is we're adding a little bit of extra all the way around that we want this thing to be blue, just in case it gets cut wrong. Okay, so as not to get a little white edge, we add to it this, and we're gonna add that, make that, let's make that white, and no color. Oops. So we don't get in that. Otherwise, there's potentially, we'll show you here if we draw it, there's like a little white edge. You might get a little white edge there if you didn't line it up exactly perfectly, or they did not print it exactly perfectly. Okay, so when someone says, talks about a bleed, that's the area that's going over or outside of the printed area. So when they cut it on the big machines, the big guillotine machines, it won't show as a white mark. Okay, so if we want this page to be all blue, for example, as the background, we're just going to do something like this, where we're going to give it about 1/8 of an inch, a bleed. Okay, so just a little bit of bleed outside of the area. So when they do cut it, we don't have problems. Likewise, if we have, we're just going to do some type. When we have typography, we're also trying to be conservative or conscious of the bleed. So if we had the type that went really close to the edges here, the chances of it getting cut off a little bit are pretty high. Okay, so we either want to make the type either extend out beyond the bleed, meaning we know it's going to get cut off, and we're good with that as a designer, or we want to make it inside the bleed. So like we did 1/8 of an inch or so outside. Likewise, we want to do about 1/8 of an inch inside, so we don't cut that off. If the type is right near close to the edge, there's a very good chance that it could potentially be cut off, and that would be something we would not want. Okay, so plan the bleed, meaning plan to have it go extend out. Okay, or if you're doing something like, in this case, type, you'll get that there. Okay, so it's pretty common, and you'll see that used a lot. Okay, as you're working, and I'm going to open. Let me find a template that has that in it, because like when you download and you're working with a thing for a company, oftentimes they have a template. I think I saw one. Okay, so this should have a, no, they want that a PNG. I'm just checking. Okay, here's a guide. Let me open this up, see if this is right. Okay, so this is like one of the companies I work with for making my t-shirts. They also make, in this case, you can make blankets. So the safe print area here, they're saying the red dots are the area where you want to watch your text or images and make sure that um, whatever is really important is within that area. The blue green kind of color is the um, area that they're going to actually make the blanket to, in this case, or cut. And then the black line is the bleed area, meaning they want you to make it larger so when it gets cut down, you're not cutting something off. You're not cutting part of your picture off, part of your words off, etc. So you'll see these kind of lines show up a lot in files or templates that you start to work with when you're starting to design. Okay, so there's a safe area, and the safe area is within the not too close to the edge because they don't want you to print it off. And then we have the edge, and then we have the bleed, which is the area outside of the cut, outside of the size of what we're going to be cutting your object. Okay, so in this case, for your posters, um, just be aware of that. If I have a picture and I want it to extend off, you should extend off by just about a 1/4 inch or so with that bleed. And likewise, you don't want to get your text too close to the edge because it might get cut off. Okay, so be cautious of that. I do not usually draw a secondary box inside to be in there. I'm going to draw one here just so you can see. We'll do that, the line. I'm going to give it a stroke so you can see. So this line here would be kind of like our interior safe line. Okay, so I don't do that because I know by looking at it after all these years how close you can be and can't be. But that would be the example of that kind of pink line or that dotted line you saw in there. Now, of course, you can do that if you feel like you need that. You could always make this a new layer. Okay, so you can make a whole layer of guides if you wanted to. And remember, you can go up to, we'll say, the properties for this object. Okay, so right now the stroke is a 2-point, but I could make it a dash line here, and that should work. Let me see if that works up as a dash. So you can see that dash line. Okay, and then when you go to print it, you would turn that off. Okay, you would simply turn that layer off or that object off. That's here. Okay, so you don't want it to print. You're just using it as a guide so you can make sure you don't get stuff too close to the edge of your paper. That makes sense? All right, so let's go ahead and make a poster and we'll go from there. And if you guys have questions, please chime in, right? So we're just kind of going through, we made it again, 11 by 17. Let me get rid of that. And we're gonna pull that off for now. So we're back to our original page. And I'm going to open up a picture that I know I just kind of worked on the other day, just kind of goofing around. Okay, so this is a photo I took at Zion. And I'm going to say I want to make this into my page. And we're going to just kind of blow that up to kind of fit. So we know it's going to fit roughly like that. I'm going to copy it and bring it back over here to my 11 by 17. And it's on the same layer. Let me make a new layer. I'm going to put it into a new layer just because I can. So we got that bottom layer, which we really right now have nothing on. We have this layer, which has our artwork. In this case, the photograph. And what I'm trying to do is kind of fit this to size. So the picture was not taken at 11 by 17 size. So if I just kind of scale proportionally, yeah, I'm getting a little bit over here, which is I think maybe too much. I want to kind of get that rock, and they call this rock the Watchman. It's kind of like looks over the valley of it. So a couple things I could do. I could either know that it's going to get cropped off with a crop like this, and you can see outside of the black will be there. I could use my Illustrator and just kind of will squish it, we'll say. Now, with something like this being a mountain or nature, um, the squishing is not that bad. Had I done it with a face, that would be, you would see that. Literally, if you like kind of, we'll say stretch, either stretch in or stretch out a face, even by like, we'll say like 4 or 5%, you'll see it. Our eyes are so, I will say, trained at looking at people's faces. We're going to go, there's something wrong there. There's some distortion going on there. With something like the mountains and obviously the clouds here, very hard to kind of see that distortion. It's possible. You may go, looks a little bit distorted, but not enough that your eye at the end would go, oh, that's too off. Now again, you could take it to extremes, right? If I took it something like this, at some point that looks too distorted, and I know that. Okay, so you know, but with nature, you have a little more give way as to how you can kind of tweak your picture. So just keep that in mind. But when you do get to things like buildings and faces and people, we can detect that distortion pretty easily. Okay, just because we're so used to seeing these things and we just kind of know how they look. And people are gonna look at it and go, "There's something off there. I don't know what it is, but it looks weird." Because you probably distort a little bit. Okay, so just be cautious and careful with your distortions. Now, on Thursday, we talked about like looking through different ways and styles of designing, and I'm going to open up this. So we kind of went through the ideas of how to draw out your poster. Again, this is very flat, and they've just kind of eliminated everything, but there's a couple clouds with the architecture of the building and some flowers. Um, this one again is pretty flat also, but there's a little bit more definition in there with the eruption of Old Faithful. Very kind of a flat version file, also flat. Okay, so kind of breaking things down in geometric. Okay, this one's still flat, but we got some nice perspective. We got some shadow going on. So they're kind of minimizing, but not completely. This is very minimalistic. Um, and then we have things like we looked at some of the NASA photos. And again, they're getting kind of realistic here. Look at that. So we've got this nice shadow, but then we've got this kind of abstraction going on outside the window. Um, Here we've got abstraction of the elements. Again, they're going to some kind of spaceship into um, this moon, it looks like. Here's the one for Earth. Again, pretty realistic going on back here with the trees in the mountains. We've got a lot of items here, and then even with the front illustration, the foreground, fairly detailed with that. So it's really kind of looking at, what kind of artistic style do you want to inspire you by? This one's pretty realistic. Okay, doll drawn up in an Illustrator technique. So, is it flat, like something like this? Or are we, going pretty definitional and stuff like that? Can we put swears on a poster? I don't care. You talking about language? Yeah, I don't. I'm not the language police. Trust me. I try to be. My 9-year-old. I'm like, well, you didn't learn that word from me. Where'd you learn that word from? You always blame it on the mom. Mom blames it on the dad. So, all right. So I want you again spend some time looking at kind of artistic styles to kind of get inspired by what you want to do. Okay. Um, so I'm going to, couple ways you can do this. So one, I can do a live trace on this and we will get kind of close to this. I could also kind of go through and I'm going to just copy this layer so I have one to work with. Um, I could go through and start to trace, right? I could use my pen tool um, and I can kind of just kind of come along and I can kind of trace this whole thing up. Again, just trying to think of, how do I want this? I was looking at some of those um, very flat kind of graphic. Okay, so that's kind of there. Obviously, I don't want blue, so let me pick out something else. We'll get right into the orange. Okay, as my kind of inspiration. All right, and then let's just say I want a blue sky. Um, so I'm going to just kind of do a blue sky back here. Again, I can go very rough. I'm not really worried about how I'm covering up this item. All right, and then I can put this, go back to my layers, and obviously put that below the mountain there. Okay, and maybe I want this blue instead of just being blue. Maybe I want to do a gradient on top. So we're going to just kind of make it a gradient. Oh, come on, baby. Yeah, scooping off. My computer's acting up. Right. Give me 1 second. I'm going to add a gradient in here. Give me 1 sec. Season sky gradients. Okay. And then I can make those adjustments on the gradients. I'm double clicking the gradient and I want to cancel that. Get my properties. I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. There we go. That's what I wanted. And we're good with that. We're just going to call that a day. Okay, so we have that. And again, if we want to come back through and kind of draw some sky in, I can select that layer or sub layer, we should say. Okay, and come up here, give me my opacity, right? And I can drop that down. Okay, so now I can start to see the clouds that I want. I can redraw in some clouds or whatever elements that I want. So I'm seeing that image from below. And of course, in the end, I can turn that off um, and not have to see that, right? So I just have the object there and start to work. Okay, so that's one way. Again, just kind of breaking things down into basic shapes, looking at something. Again, find a nice image or some images that you can combine together to help you with your drawing. If you're a great drawer, obviously look at something and you can draw it and you can scan that in and then start to trace it out within Illustrator. Okay, so if you have that artistic skill and ability to, hand draw stuff, by all means do. Okay, I mean, that's a good thing to have. So get into that kind of practice of drawing, putting it into computer. Can be a photograph, can be a scan, and then trying to draw on top of it with your Illustrator tools. Okay, questions so far? Does it make sense? All right, so another way of doing this would be to just simply do a live trace. And what that is I'm going to use the image trace option up here. And then I'm going to try to figure out what do I want. Do I want to look just like a photograph, or do I want to kind of look a little bit illustratorly? I'm not going to go with this 6 colors because I think this is going to turn out a little bit illustratorly. So I'm going to say, okay, it's going to be a little slow. It's saying there's a lot of points, and there is. It's going to be selecting all of this and kind of combining things. It's going to take a second here to put together.
How you bring up the image trace thing?
Yeah, typically it will, because you put it in a bitmap or an image, it kind of defaults to the top up here, just because it kind of knows that's what you want to do. So if it doesn't give you this kind of interface here, and again, this is where you can do that. You can also go to Window.
Okay, window.
And go to image trace. Okay, and that's
okay.
Up here. And you might want to go to this anyway, because this will give you a few more options to do this. All right, so I'm going to go back to mode, and we're going to say I want it to be color, and I want the you can see results with outlines, with just outlines, outlines with source image or source image. So it's basically right now giving you the result without an outline or a stroke on it. You can limit the palette here. In this case, I'm limiting it to 30, or I can do kind of a preview there. Click the preview, and you'll see it's going to work it up real quick here. So this is working this out with 6 or 15 colors. When I had that drop down, I didn't have that option. It was like 3, 6, 10, something like that. We'll look at it in a second here. Okay, so in the normal interface, oh, it's already traced, so it won't show me there. It gives you less options, so you have more options here. The other thing is you can adjust the modes. I'm going to go back. I need to go back a step here. And we're going to put it down to 12 colors. And look in here. So by using the image trace window, you get a little bit extra options that you can do. Let me just want to see what this comes. It takes time sometimes depending on the size of your picture. So it did this. It's not too bad. The mountains aren't too bad. And let's say I don't want that. So it normally is 3, 6, 16. I picked it at I think it was 15. I'm going to undo that again, and I'm going to do, let me see here. I want to do color, custom. what you can also do here too, it's good to go, is the pass. So it lets you make less or more. In this case, it's doing about half, 50%. I'm going to drop it down again just to show you the options of this. It's hard because it's like a big picture, so it's taking its time and it's doing stuff. But these are all passed. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to drop the colors down to 10. I'm going to drop the pass down. Now, so we're trying to basically, I'm just looking at giving you guys options of showing you how it can simplify or not with your image here. It's a little bit better. I'm going to just drop the pass down and the corners down. The problem is it's like in mode, it's just preview mode, so it's kind of doing everything as I did. I should have turned that off. But it's taken down to 10 colors. You can see it had 1,300 pass in that last time I did, and 25,000 anchors. So I mean, that's a lot of points in there. We dropped it to 19, so we're down a little bit more with that. And we're gonna say, we're just gonna, for time now, say that we're good. Put this away. And now, once we have this, it's kind of like a preview. I need to expand it so I can work with that. Okay, so now it's been expanded, and basically, this is all one grouped image. Okay, so if I want to get rid of some of the sky or do something like that, I need to select the object, in this case, the whole layer, and I want to ungroup. Okay, so file ungroup. That way I can specifically select individual panels. Okay, so I can take things in and out. So let's just say my goal is I'm going to leave from here, kind of this kind of line down, but up top I don't want any, I just want it to be blue. Okay, so I'm going to come back in here. I'm just going to kind of start deleting things, and I can even delete that. I'm just going to stretch along. No, I don't want to. I want to keep this one. Okay. So I'm going to come across here, and I'm just getting rid of some of these panels. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, and I'm just going to kind of stretch it. So all of these are points within this frame. And what I'm going to do, instead of kind of trying to trace it or move it, right? I can kind of move it. You can also select a corner and stretch it. It's going to get a little crazy to keep doing that with all these points in there. But I'm just in my head thinking, okay, I want to keep that color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a box up here of that color. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just come along and delete all those other things that I don't want. Let me move this out of the way. I'm pulling this down. I want to keep this up. So I want to keep these clouds and I want to keep these clouds, but I want to get rid of all the other ones up top. I'm just going to just kind of highlight them and delete. Just kind of quickly coming through. Just getting rid of the reason I'm getting rid of all these little points is because to me, I think it was just getting a little bit too cluttered. So I want to kind of see if I can kind of, I don't know, clean it up a little bit as if the clouds are coming in, but they're not over the entire sky area. So I'm going to put this here, and then I'm going to scale this thing up. And then I'm going to come back over here to my layers, and I'm going to move it down. Okay, I'm just going to keep moving it down so I get it below the sky itself. And you can see there's a lot of paths in there. There's a ton. Okay. pulling it down, pulling it down. Now I could just send it to the back. Let me see if that will work. Maybe save me some time here. Arrange, send it back. Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I wanted. So we've got the clouds in the sky. Now I've run into some problems here where this probably should be the dark blue. So I'm going to actually make that background just bigger, pull it down. So now when I click on these areas and delete, we start to see the blue, the darker blue coming through. So I'm deleting any of these light blue areas that we see in the image. I'm going to leave the other ones. So just kind of be careful. If you select the wrong thing, you can click on the side, and that deselects it. I can also just Command Z if I delete the wrong thing by accident also. Okay, so we're pulling that in. We got a little bit of that light blue I want to get rid of up here. Okay, that's not too bad. Okay, so we've got this. And we're going to say this is kind of our artwork. Now, things, again, we talked about what do we want to bring in. We're going to want to bring in our logo. Okay, so I'm going to call this out as my logo. And I'm going to give it a different color background so you guys can see it better when I bring it into the poster. And I'm going to give it, we'll just go with the orange. No, that doesn't work. Okay, so we're going to go there. I'm going to select this. Oops, I don't want to get that part above. I'm going to group it, Command G. I'm going to copy. I'm going to bring this back over here to our poster that we're working on. And we're going to put this, scaling this down. We're going to put this in the corner down here. Okay, so this is our travel agency logo. And scale it up a little bit more. Again, hold the shift key as you're scaling in Illustrator. Remember, in Photoshop, you do not need to hold the shift key anymore. You'll get confused, and that's okay. So we've got this, and we're pretty good. And what I want to do is I'm going to start doing some type up here, and I want to kind of work a new layer. So I'm going to just kind of collapse this, and I'm going to lock it because I don't want it to kind of, I want to be able to do what I need to do with my type and not have to worry about selecting something on this layer here. And again, I'm working this really quick, but I would in reality come back and probably redraw all of this in and potentially even change some colors. Okay. With something like this here, before I'll unlock for a sec, I can select that and you can see it's all pretty much one color. So if I wanted a different color, you know, I can do that. And now it's purple. Does that make sense? So, you know, feel free to, you know, play and experiment and kind of figure out what is going to work for you from a color standpoint. And it's perfectly fine to kind of exaggerate and do something a little bit different with that. Okay, just to kind of create some visual interest, and you can go back to your color themes, okay, to bring out some colors. All right, so let me lock this again. And then I'm going to start, just make a new layer over here. Remember layer 2 here we're not working with now. Layer 1 is really nothing on it. So what I'm going to do is do some type. And I'm gonna quickly work, and I'm doing two. Again, I don't know what's going to work for me on this because again, every time it's kind of first time. But I want to have just say explore Zion, and what I'm thinking about is having the type kind of arch in here, right? So I want it to kind of arch around in this kind of way. So I'm going to get my type so it's pretty close to what I want from a type standpoint. I want something thick and large. Something's going to kind of stand out. And we're going to just default to Helvetica because I know that's going to work. We'll do that. Now, I'm going to adjust the leading or space between here because I do have two lines. To see how that works. 72 needs to be more than that. Most times you'll find I end up doing this each one separately. So I would have the word explore on one line of type, and I would have Zion on another. But I want to kind of show you this, how we can make this work. So I'm going to scale this up. Again, it's going to keep the leading proportional. And of course, I could kind of work with something like this. Again, I want to be within the line of my poster. Don't want it to be coming off the end. If I need to see the center line, which I probably would want, go to view, rulers, show rulers. Okay, and then I can come in if I know my paper is 11, 5.5 is my center. So there's 5, and then there's the half mark of that. So that's the center of the poster. And then I can click on my type and I can kind of see if am I lining up with center line or not. So we could do something like this with the poster where it's kind of very straight type. And of course, this type can be whatever color we choose it to be. Let me select it first. Could be white. We can use our eyedropper to pick out the color from the sky or the clouds, okay, which probably would make it look a little better. So again, just by clicking with the eyedropper, it's going to pick up the clouds, the color of the clouds and such. But I want to show you a couple other things. In Illustrator, we have these effects. And we've gone through them a little bit here, but these are pretty awesome here, especially the warp. This, I think, works out really nice for type. And I'm going to just start with the arc. And what it's going to do is let me get it out of the way. You can kind of see a preview of what it's going to do. Now, again, remember, everything's scalable, so don't sweat the fact that it's too big right now. We can scale that back down now. But what you're trying to do is look at what it's going to do. So they have arc. We have something like this, a lower arc, upper arc, arch, okay, which is kind of nice. There's the bulge, which I don't know if that will work. The shell, the upper shell, the flag. Okay, so let's say we like the flag, but it's like it's too much. Again, we can come back in here and adjust how that goes, and we can also do it the other way. Okay, so you can kind of get a little preview of that. It does do vertical, but that's not going to work for this, basically, because we're in a very horizontal typeface here. The wave, which is a little bit less. Okay, and let me see what else we got in here. I like the rise. The rise might work, and I might do it this way. Let me see. Yeah, we're just going to do. I think I'm going to like this. So I'm going to click that, and we get the Explore Zion. Again, as you move, it will give you kind of a weird preview, but you just kind of click it and just you're watching the items below, and it's going to adjust. And likewise, if I need it to be smaller, I can still scale that down. Okay, so I can move that. I'm going to center it a little bit more. And know that you can twist and turn this even more, meaning I can take the corners, right, and I can just kind of turn it to do it that way. If I want to, right, I can rotate the whole column, the whole text left to right. So we're actually pretty good there. I'm kind of digging that a little bit. And maybe I decided, you know what, let me want to put my logo up here instead of down on the bottom. So I'm going to come back to my layers. I'm going to unlock and I'm going to select this group, which I know is together. You know, maybe that kind of gets moved up here. Again, it's kind of like this kind of experimentation, looking and seeing what works. Eh, you know, I think it was better the other way. So I can Command Z, put it all the way back to where it was. We're back at the bottom there. Again, make sure you're saving. I haven't saved yet. That's probably not a good thing. So save, that way you don't lose your work. Put that here. I'm saving it as a PDF compatible. That's just the way these kind of things default to. But I'll show you how to save it at the end. So let's say we're good and we're happy. We're going to want to do this. So you're going to want to export. And you can export as a PDF. Let me see if it's here. I can do it. No, I got to do it the other way. I'm going to save as a PDF. Okay, and of course, again, you want to put your name on there. I know whose poster it is. I'm going to save, and this is where the defaults come up. And on the requirements, it says smallest file size. So click on that. That turns off the editing capabilities. I always go to my highest PDF number and then hit save. And you get that warning, oh, you're going to be off. It's not going to be editable again because it's a PDF without layers, which is fine. I don't need it to be. I'm just looking for something that I can turn in. Okay. But I'll have my other one later that I can go back to work on or process later if I change ideas. Okay, questions so far? So I decided after looking at this, I don't want this just to be a rectangle color. I decided I'm going to make it kind of maybe a sunset. Okay, and I'm going to open up my gradient. And I want to make it 90, I think. I'm going to go minus 90. Okay, and I'm going to pull it back. Okay, so again, just that little bit of a trade, changing out the colors makes a big difference. Okay, so don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to copy layers. Don't be afraid to copy whole files. Okay, so as you're starting to work, you know, go and experiment. That's kind of what this is all about. Now, things you want to be cautious of right now, because these are all little individual pieces. If I want to move this, I have to group it all again. Okay, so I'm going to lock out that, and I'm going to come back to my layer here. I'm going to find it, should be near the bottom. I'm going to lock out that individual layer. So I'm going to just select, let me find that one. I'm going to just lock that one out too, because I don't want it to be a part of it. Okay, so I'm going to highlight all of that kind of elements, and then I'm going to group again. That way I can resize if I need to. Okay, because they were separate. Okay, because there'd be no way to be able to select all of that and make it come out probably the way you want to. Okay, so I'm just kind of cleaning up the edges a little bit for the sake of cleaning it up. Okay, it's a little bit under. It's good. Trying to just match it up just so I don't have any problems. And again, you can come back and lock and unlock things as you start to work. And you can lock whole layers and then lock sub layers or subgroups in there. Okay. Again, because if selecting little things, you can see as I roll over, it kind of selects all these points, and that might cause problems down the line. Okay, so in order to not have those issues, I'm going to play with sometimes turning things on and off and locking. Now, again, we have back here the original that we kind of started with, and we're going to just kind of clear this off. And we're going to clear that off there. Okay, so we have the original photo. And so let's say I want to kind of go back and see how this would work with the type on that. So I'm going to lock my second layer. Okay, I'm going to lock and turn that off. And I'm going to come back to my original picture, select the image, and I'm going to do another live trace on it or image trace. And I'm going to again pull out the panel. Why is that not opening up here? So what I'm doing now is I'm looking at this thing, trying to play with the live trace. Do I like it with all the clouds built in? Do I want to kind of go back to that half minimalized image from before with part clouds and partly no clouds? Okay, so that's kind of there. And you can see, obviously, I've got a lot of problem with the type being legible with this particular kind of color palette. So I'm going to do another trace. And I'm going to go to color. And I'm going to drop the pass down and the corners down. I think that's pretty good. I'll let that trace out here.
Danny, while I was doing Illustrator, I might have forgotten how to do the image trace, and I was just like, how did he do it again?
Is this making sense what I'm doing?
Yeah, it makes sense what you're doing. I guess what because you did the image trace earlier, and then as I was doing it, I was like, wait, how do you do it again?
Yeah, so this is, again, there's all the kind of variables with it. Like this one, I'm not liking the clouds, but I'm digging the rock a little bit more. So again, this might be something where you're kind of playing with that image twice. So like I kind of dig the clouds in this version, but I dig the rock in this version. So this might be something where, again, I can come back through. So I'm using the same picture twice. I'm just going to expand it. And then I'm going to actually come back through, and I have to ungroup, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the sky completely, because I'm just like, I don't want the sky. I want the other sky. So I'm literally just kind of selecting. And because everything else is locked on the old version, it's not affecting it. And I'm just kind of quickly get through. I would have to get in there and get all these pieces out. But I'm basically taking off the old sky. I'm not going to get in there completely. But you can see, you can got to go through, and there's a lot of points, a lot of little objects to get rid of. But we'll say we're cool there. And then I can turn this one back on, and then I can come back through. And then what I have to do is kind of have to lock this area. So let me find that. Is that there? Let me see. Let me unlock. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to isolate that part of, did I group it? I grouped it with the sky. So I got to try to kind of figure out where that is. There we go. So I'm kind of got it. If you double click on it, it goes into isolation mode. So you can see it is a group. I already made it a group, or it did it by itself. So I'm trying to find that group. Here it is here. And I can turn that off. Okay, and then there's something, no, there's something else going on back here. Oh, I got to pull the sky up. The sky's kind of blocking over. All right, so I'm gonna leave the sky alone. So you can see I'm starting to move layers all over the place here in a second. Okay, so this is the sky, the one I want. I'm gonna push that up. So there we go. So I just moved that layer up, okay, to cover over. So if I had done that in the beginning, I wouldn't have had to even try to find that isolation. I'm gonna pull it back to here. So we're here. I like the sky, but I want the other. I'm gonna pull that one up, put that on top. There we go. So I've got the new rocks on top of the old rocks because we're basically the same size. Looks like it's a little bit size difference, but I lucked out and my new one is a little bit bigger than the old one. Okay. So again, now I've got the clouds that I potentially want with the sky that I want. And now I have the rocks that I want, the color, temperature, and the detail here, which is much more than what I had here. So again, I'm working back and forth. And again, this is evolving as we go, but that's what design is. Design is an evolution. All right, so that makes sense with the live trace and stuff, guys, and how you can do it. Again, use them as kind of like a template. Use your live trace as a way of doing it. Now, if I want to look exactly like the picture, I can, right? So I'm going to go over here to this one. This is the original one. And I'm going to select it. I'm going to do an image trace. I'm going to go high fidelity photo. Excuse me. And it's going to run it. And when it's done, it's going to pretty much look like this photograph. Okay, so this is where you would go to Photoshop first, make your adjustments, your contrast, your color temperatures, all that kind of anything you want to do. You do it in Photoshop, then you bring it in, and then you can live trace, and it's going to basically simulate how that would look had it become a vector as compared to a bitmap. So it's tracing it now, and it's going to come out with thousands and thousands and thousands of lines and points, and it's going to be nuts. Okay, so you can see there now it is a vector, and I zoom in, you can see all of these vectors, right? It is nuts, okay, completely nuts. But it is a vectorized version of that photograph. So to work with it, again, I would expand it, and you can see all the tens of thousands of points. And right now it's still grouped. So if I click it anywhere, it selects all of them. If I want to get rid of certain parts or elements of it, that's where I would click and then ungroup. Okay, so now I can specifically come in and pick up little points or little anchors that I wanted to work with. Okay, otherwise just kind of keep it all grouped together. It'll make it easier for you moving it around and such. Okay, but it's a pretty high fidelity tracing or drawing now that I could, in theory, blow up to whatever size I want. Now it's going to still have this kind of look to it when you zoom in because it is a vector now as opposed to a pixel, right? So it's blocks and shapes and such. But again, it is scalable now that it's become vector. Okay, remember, had it been still a photograph, it would not be. You'd be able to scale but only so far. That makes sense. So just kind of think about that. What you want to do with your images. and get the pictures right before you bring them in to do a live trace. Okay. I'm just Command Z it back a little bit here. So now it's back. One more. Oh, enough of that. All right. So we have our poster. So other things we can do potentially with our poster. I'm going to unlock the type. I'm going to move the type down a little bit. Things you could do is maybe put a frame in there. Okay, so that's just simply a white box. We're just going to draw a box in. So it's about there. We don't want it filled, so we're going to switch it so the stroke is there. We're going to give it a little bit heavier stroke so it pops up. Okay, and now we start to do that. Looks like my type is feeling a little big, so I'm just going to scale that down a little bit. Recenter. And we have such as that. Now, things you can do is you can break this apart, and we can make it look like the frame is coming from behind these objects. Okay, so things you can do with that is, again, we got a watch here. This kind of got behind it, which I don't want. But I want to kind of go behind, so I can kind of zoom up over here. And I'm going to use my eraser tool. Remember, we have these tools. Oops, too far. So I'm going to use the eraser tool. Make sure I'm selected on my object. I'm on there. Got my eraser tool. And what I want to do is kind of just come along and just trace out that edge. Oops. One second, I'm going to zoom in over here again. Nope, that won't work. We're going to cut it. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get rid of this little line here. Let me step back. I want to go back to where I was. Okay. Zoom back in. Moving that over. Wandering over to this side. I'm just trying to break off this path. There's nothing in the middle there, but I want that. Usually the eraser tool would work, but it's not. So I'm going to try the knife tool. What I'm just going to do is try to cut across right there. Let's see if it selected that. Come on. They always act up for you when you're trying to demo. Come back to the. All right, I'm going to go weird here on you guys. I'm going to pathfind it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a second shape. I'm just going to do as a rectangle for now down here, and I want to come all the way over to, we'll say here. So I've got that, and I'm going to select this other shape, and I'm going to come to my Pathfinder tool, And what I want to do is I want to minus the front. Let me see if that does it. It did. So basically it cut off that front area and left the other area. No, I didn't want that. Actually, that's kind of weird, but that's kind of cool. Sorry. Let me do, that's not perfect. I want to find trim. No. So I'm looking to see if I can get one of these Pathfinder tools to work to cut off that corner and keep the other one. That did it, but the opposite. I want the opposite. So put this one to the front. Sometimes you have to just kind of play, right? You go, oh, that didn't work. And you get frustrated, but don't get frustrated, okay? It's just kind of the way things go with this. Because it wants things in certain positions to do things. Okay, so that, did that work? Man, I still edit that other path in there. Anyway, I'll have to come back, but what I was trying to do visually was have it appear as if the frame that I created here was going behind the rock and then coming back out. And it can be done. I just thought I don't have the patience right now to do it as we're demoing. But things to think about too is the line itself. Right, so right now it's just a simple stroke, but if you click on the stroke, you can do other strokes. You could do something like a dash line. Okay, you can remember we can round the corners, how we want those corners to be, if we want them to be rounded instead of square. We can also think about our lines in different ways so we can kind of give it some dimension sometimes. Okay, so these are other ways that we can kind of play with that line to look visually different. Okay, so always go to your properties and look at some of the options you might have in order to create the kind of line that you might want. Okay, questions? Kind of a quick demo, hopefully a few more Illustrator tips as you go here. Questions on this? Anything we've covered or we need to cover? Let me share. All right. Anybody come in since we started, or anybody I missed? Here. Anybody else pop in? Yes. Okay. Questions, guys?
I do not have questions other than the one I asked earlier.